that was one small change. A few mobile fixes I actually needed. And this is everything that came with it. The spec, the tests, the docs, the decisions, all traced back. I didn't write any of it. I just started the process. Unfortunately, AI doesn't do that part. It builds fast, but skips everything that makes software safe to keep. The part I've spent my whole career on. So I built it back in. It's called Shipwright, it runs on Claude Code, and it's open. Here's the idea. AI writes the code now. That part is solved. The hard part is the next change, and the one after, and the one after. For that, AI has to know what's already true about the product, what it's supposed to do, how it's built, and why. Writing that down, usually all the tools do that. Keeping it honest, automatically on every change, so you don't quietly break a behavior you decided on, or undo a call you made 2 months ago without realizing, that's the part I had to build. So AI always starts from correct, current ground. Here's what that looks like. What you can see now is what I call the Shipwright Command Center. It's a web UI on top of your local subscription that is using an embedded terminal to interact with Claude Code. It's basically the same terminal that is embedded in Visual Studio Code or other terminal implementations. So you can see it here. It's the terminal as you know it. On the left-hand side is the view of the repo, and on the right-hand side, a small smart viewer. Will come to that in a second. To show you what it's done, it's easier to go through the transcript. You can see it here. It's nothing else than reading the local JSON files and rendering in the command center. So it started, and obviously before we dive in, you can use your Visual Studio Code, your terminal, whatever you want. It's nothing that's stopping you from doing that. But if you like something that is more visual and that helps you organize your work, the Shipwright Command Center might be something that you would like to use. So it starts with the iterate and does the complexity rating, so it knows what way it needs to go to conclude the change. So it identified that here I've asked it for 4 things. We'll come to that. And it realized that I want a smaller header in the mobile view of the phone. And I have noticed 3 bugs that it needs to fix. It classified it as medium, and with that comes a certain set of functionalities along the pipeline. First and foremost, it had a question regarding the implementation of the header. So it rendered that in the terminal. I've just put it out on an HTML because it's not rendered back in. I might add that in the future, but here you can see it asked me which implementation I like, and then it figured it out, and we went through. It created the work tree and updated the task list, and the first thing is obviously to write the spec. The spec is available in the Shipwright directory here on the left, planning directory, and iterate. Here you can see that we have this one here, and on the right, the view of it gives you the acceptance criteria, the context, also out of scope areas, and then in the confidence calibration, it helps itself to not skip the tests that shouldn't be skipped. That's maybe material for its own video. So then it also updates it along the way, and it starts working. So writes the iterate spec and goes through, and then here we go. It is a medium change, so it asks an external LLM for review in that sense here through OpenRouter, Gemini, and OpenAI if the plan is valid. And as you can see, it came back with useful stuff. It will triage it and decide which ones we should implement, update the spec, and update acceptance criteria 1 to reflect these feedbacks from the external LLMs. And then it starts writing, but first it realized that there is a requirement that in the end it needs to update about the responsive phone view. And this one is here. I've already opened it up on the right-hand side. The spec is saved within planning, and here the spec adopted is a repository that wasn't started with Shipwright. It was adopted later on. So it wrote an abstract about the Shipwright Command Center that we're working on right here, and it derived the requirements. And let me pop it up that it's easier to read. Let's go to the 39 that we had before. And you can see here that the 39 was updated with the respective information from that specific change. So if we talk about phone responsive view, it's the accurate version of what is behind that requirement. So it started with the implementation, went through, did the tests, and in the end gave it for the PR, right? Here, an important thing is that the verification was unit tests, but also end-to-end web tests, because a medium change in a web environment like this one here demands end-to-end playwright real browser tests. But still, it says, hey, we need to check these two items on your device because that's something I cannot handle myself. So the judgment in the end stays mine. So let me give you a few words about the command center itself. Why have I built it? I had 20 windows open on a Visual Studio Code, read about Multica and thought that's exactly what I need. So I use the concept of having a board and interacting with different projects from that repository. Important, the concept, right? I use that one. And you can see it here. It's basically a drop down of the different projects that I'm working right now, what's in flight across all the projects. Let me go here. And on the left-hand side, an inbox similar to Agents View that Anthropic provided recently, but across everything. And I can interact if there is a question and jump to that. And a triage area. So if, for example, I have drift and a compliance review finds that drift in terms of the spec is not accurate anymore, something was pushed maybe as an admin without PR and something got out of sync, it shows it to me here, and then I can immediately start and fix that one out of this triage item. Also, when I have new requirements that are not yet in the backlog, but that I want to do someday, here you can see it, for example, the web UI or the command center over HTTPS to make it work over tailscale like it should. That's something that I've also positioning here, and then you can also start that from here. What I want to mention as a last bit is I'm not only managing my development projects here, also content marketing, the creation of that video, for example. And what is possible, you add your own custom skills that are sitting in your Claude skills folder. And you add a JSON that tells it which skill should be triggered with this specific button here. So if I want to create content, I basically just start here and it triggers the content creator skill here, compared to when I'm sitting in my Shipwright Web UI folder, it's powered by Shipwright. I create a new iterate, a new change, and I start it like that. And eventually I end up in the embedded terminal. So that's the Shipwright Command Center. The plugins run wherever you want, terminal, Visual Studio Code extension, or if you want in this embedded web UI to make your work a little easier. Shipwright won't make AI build faster, and it won't take your judgment away. Whether the change does the right thing, that's still on you, as you've seen it in the change I've demonstrated. What it does take off your plate is everything that's needed around it. Shipwright is open source on GitHub right now. Shipwright, not just fast.